Welcome to the Health Made Easy podcast. Health advice so easy, you'll feel more confident about your body, health, and life. And now, your host, Dr. Connie Jean.
Hi everybody, so this is our Q&A Friday, and we've had a lot of great questions, so I'm going to try to speed through them as much as I can. I took a lot of notes to make sure I don't forget to mention any of them. So first question comes from Beverly Astley. Hi Beverly. She asks, the probiotics I take are working wonders on my stomach, but my immune system is still out to kill me. On a positive, my kidneys are doing better, but my lungs and heart are getting my immune system attention now. Help, what can I do? So this is a good question. So much of our immune system really does reside in our gut. And that's why the probiotics are helping a ton, but it'll kind of have that threshold to as to how much that can help. So the underlying inflammation is what's making your heart and your lungs to get the attention from your immune system. So typically for such inflammations, rheumatologists have these biologics and NSAIDs that they prescribe to kind of tone down the inflammation. But oftentimes that's a problem because they'll terminate that pathway and it's irreversible. But sometimes if you can use the adaptogens and supplements to mitigate such inflammatory processes, you're much better off. And that's sort of what I'm all about, right? So to try to tone down the inflammation without doing too much irreversible damage, because it's all about balance. And so you want to tone down the inflammation, but then you don't want things to go to the other parts of your organs, right? So having said that, we now know that corticosteroids and biologics like Remicade or methotrexate or NSAIDs have only a temporary relief, and they're finding that statistically 50% of lupus patients or any autoimmune patients don't continue because they don't really help after a while, or even initially, or they can't handle the side effects. So one thing to mention is that such meds are such a multi-billion-dollar industry. The biologics that's produced and manufactured for especially rheumatoid arthritis, it's huge, billion-dollar industry. And so I think there is an underlying motive to keep patients like us on such medications. And when we talk about the adaptogens and nutraceuticals that I talk about, there's not a whole lot of money in that in research and prescriptions and so forth. So you're not going to get a lot of mention. But I can assure you, I've done the research and I study alongside the Institute of Functional Medicine, where I've been able to expose a lot of good evidence-based research to state that a lot of the immunomodulators do exist in the nutraceuticals and the adaptogens, such as herbals, right? So this can help you a ton. I do want to make a correction though. Your immune system really is not out to get you because that inflammatory response is a healthy one. It's just a little confused and it needs your help to kind of balance and create that homeostasis. The faster you can achieve it, the better you can modulate it so that you can prevent it from going to other organs, right? And so if you remember my post about the mitochondrial dysfunction being at the root cause of all autoimmune conditions or all diseases, even cancer, there is a lot of truth to that particular blog. So please refer to that blog for your reference. But I want to say that our body has a way of receiving signals and metabolizing sort of these chemicals that gets introduced in our bodies. And it's really in our interest to really create a very good I guess, the receptor sites on our cells. So it's all about mitochondrial regeneration. That's where the money is for us. And so how do we do that, right? So you have to remember the receptor sites on the cell is the phospholipid bilayer, which means it's a lot of fatty acids on the outer side. And that's why fish oil, good quality fish oil, EPA, DHA, in a proper balance, in a therapeutic dosage, does wonders for us. So if you're popping a pill like a omega or fish oil from just over-the-counter things that you do, the research has found that they contain a lot more oxidized fatty acids, which is not what you want because it's going to really perpetuate the inflammatory cycle. And you want to take it in a therapeutic dose. I give my patients about 2 grams to 3 grams per day, especially if you have an active flare, because that does inhibit the pathways, the inflammatory pathways, without doing irreversible terminations for the inflammatory pathways, which our body really needs. And it's all about that balance. And it's the wonder drug. Like, I really am surprised it's not patented, although they can't patent the nutraceuticals, is why you're seeing a lot more research being done on these biologics and medications that are so toxic. So metabolism is so much more than your body's ability to burn calories. It's our body's way of absorbing information from the toxins and the foods, right? But for us lupus patients, the way we absorb toxins, our tolerance has hit the limit. And so we're a lot less tolerant because of, again, the gut permeability and then the genetic predisposition and then such perpetuating factors like the foods that we constantly take in. So how can you improve the overall health of this? Well, eat a diet full of raw, low glycemic fruits and vegetables. Think highly pigmented fruits and vegetables like dark green leafies, very, very blue organic blueberries, red tomatoes or bell pepper, although they can cause a little bit of an inflammation. And so that's something to consider when you're on an elimination diet. But generally, those things are kind of safe. Think rainbows when you're thinking about foods. And fruits and vegetables are best eaten raw, as we're finding, to kind of break that down, or make juice out of them is another alternative. And then also they provide a way for us to really colonize and these fruits and vegetables in the fiber, the inulin fibers in them really work to keep our probiotics happy. They're the food for our probiotics. So the prebiotics are as essential as the probiotics. I would also recommend CoQ10, and then again, as I mentioned, therapeutic dose of fish oil, and then of course the probiotics, a good quality strain probiotics. I have access to all these things. This is one of the reasons why I have my own lupuspharmacy.com, because I don't want you guys getting toxic stuff in your system, and there's so much out there that can pose a threat for us. Sleep, exercise, and managing your stress are 3 important things in our lives. And then shifting our autonomic state, right? Of going from the fight or flight, like heavily anxious state, to more of the calm and peace state is done very well through the practice of meditation. So I hope that helps. Thank you so much for such a wonderful question. I'm going to move on to the second one. After 30-some years of living with lupus for 4 years ago, I was one of the lucky 5% to be diagnosed with, I hate saying this, it's French, Jaccoud Arthroplasty. It has attacked my hands, feet, and knees thus far. I'm unable to cut down my food at times. I can't open anything, can't hold a pen or write anymore. The strength is gone, and my thumbs are permanently dislocated. All my toes are curling so bad they had to cut the tendons underneath each of them so they would straighten out to avoid ulcerations. Ouch. This has literally crippled me, yet when one researches lupus and its effects, they will still they will state that unlike RA, lupus does not cause hand deformity, which is outright wrong. I have the swan fingers, my pinkies curl when other fingers lay straight and won't bend. It's my belief that ours as a massage therapist made me more susceptible to this condition. I know I have been told there is no treatment for laxity. However, I wondered what your thoughts were as far as maybe supplementation that can possibly strengthen or tighten the tendons. I can bet that, I'm sorry, I hit something here. I can bet that a great percentage of the people that will see this question won't even be familiar with this condition. You're probably right. And I will leave this explanation to you, for me to explain to you. Thank you so much, Pamela. You asked such a wonderful question. And thank you for sharing those pictures. They're just, they look very painful. So this particular arthroscopy was first described by Dr. Jaccoud in, I think it was 1869. And it was associated with scleroderma, vasculitis, Sjogren's syndrome, psoriatic arthritis, but mainly SLE. It's also been seen in non-rheumatic conditions such as HIV, inflammatory bowel disease, and sarcoidosis. As you can kind of understand, all these conditions at the root is all inflammatory. So I want you to really keen in on that, right? The deformity, as shared by Pam, resembles RA, but good news is that the condition, this particular condition, is reversible. The joint deformity is due to the subluxation of the distal phalangeal joints. Subluxation is just a smart term for hypermobility and unstable joints, right? The joints sort of like kind of become like rubber. They don't stay in its place. And it causes swan neck or Z-like deformities in the thumb. Although it's more commonly observed in the fingers, it can also involve the knees, it can involve the shoulders and your feet. There's a presence of synovitis, which is the inflammation in the joint space, and fibrosis around the joint. So synovitis, fibrosis are all at the root inflammation. So I know that this is getting really old, but the root of it is the inflammation. So let me explain. Even though it's hard to kind of consider the joint deformity and such a deformity to be affected by the systemic inflammation, it really is true. If you really understand the workings of our ligaments and our muscle tissue and how they attach to our respective bones to really modulate this activity, it really has to filter through. It involves a lot of central nervous system. It involves a lot of nerve pathways. It involves a lot of muscle activation. This is all at the root, mitochondrial deficiency or dysfunction, right? And so the subluxation, it just means that the brain nerve pathway to those fingers are a little bit compromised, not a little bit, but a lot compromised. So having said that, I always want to come back to the fact that certain diseases, and I'll say this probably later on, every disease is a disease, right? I don't want you guys to get bent up on defining or naming a disease so much as understanding at the root, it's the inflammation. All the autoimmune conditions like scleroderma, multiple connective tissue disorders to lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, we have overlapping conditions or symptoms that overlap, so much so that a lot of the times we don't really know what the root cause is. And doctors are so busy trying all kinds of biologics that toxify rather than really heal the root cause. So having said that, as far as the diet, Pam, you can probably go on a very phytonutrient rich. Phytonutrients are those wonder phytonutrients that really sequester the oxidative damage that we get subject to from the inflammation. And you can do that by eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. Again, not so much fruits because of the fructose content, because insulin is probably the most inflammatory hormone in our body. And so you don't want to trigger that peak in our body so much, but so low glycemic for that reason is really good. The fruits fruits and vegetables, like it should be highly pigmented, to very deep colors, think rainbows, right? And then eating it raw or barely steaming is the best option. So you don't eat away at the enzymes that it contains, but you're eating the natural chlorophylls, right? You're eating real live healthy foods that's alkalizing to the body. That's always one to remember. And then also limit your protein intake as well, because if you really think about the metabolic pathways, protein and carb high diets can be inflammatory in our body. So when we're looking to heal something like this, you want this to go away right away, right? Immediately. And so if you really want to have a good healing effect, I would go high up on the MCT oils, medium chain triglycerides, and if you want the source, I will gladly give that to you. And then have a diet high in good quality fats like macadamia nuts and pecans. Eating a lot of avocados are good. They're very dense in calories, but also very good for our body as far as the metabolic pathways that heal our body through really utilizing the fatty acids, our fuel source. It really does a number on the healing abilities to our body. The basics of that biochemical action is a little bit far-fetched for this series, but later on I'll go a little bit deeper into that. And then also supplementing yourself with the fatty acids, good quality omega-3 or EPA, DHA in good ratio balance. In a therapeutic dose, like I said, for you, probably 3 grams a day, good quality probiotics. And again, CoQ10 to help the metabolic pathways. And like I said, start there, and then maybe taking a multivitamin supplementation would be a good thing. Methylated forms of B vitamins is another good thing, just to make sure that we're covering all the bases so that your body can be a lot more efficient while toning down the inflammation, really allowing your body to heal. And I know I keep saying this, but there's a good reason why that this is going to be so helpful. So I hope that helps, Pam. There's another question later on that I'll answer, so I'm going to move on. Number 3 is it possible to have negative blood tests for antibodies and still have lupus? I've been positive in every single one and constant worsening of pain and ailments in my body for the past 12 years. But when I was pregnant with my last son over a year ago, I was told about 5 minutes after they drew my blood and I didn't have any antibodies and no further testing would happen. They still put me on Lovenox, though. Now my family wants me to test for multiple sclerosis, as 2 of my aunts have it, and some symptoms are similar. And since my son's birth, I've had back, memory, vision issues, and worsened dramatically. I just don't know where to go from here. This answer or this question comes from Heather Thacker. Thank you so much, Heather. Every one of those symptoms that you described to me has everything to do with mitochondrial dysfunction. There again. So you're going to have all these issues. If they become prolonged, coupled with the leaky gut, guess what? You're going to have a mimicry in your gut lining to go against your own cells. And that's where we have to fight. And it becomes a full-fledged autoimmune condition. Remember last week we talked about the autoimmune triad, right? We talked about the genetic susceptibility. We talked about the leaky gut. And then we talked about the lifestyle triggers, right? These things really, really do matter, right? And so talking about that, you do have genetic predisposition because it runs in your family. MS is too an autoimmune condition. So I'm really baffled at why they don't check your antibodies. But again, at the end of the day, if you're not having an active flare, then I wouldn't worry about it. But I would highly recommend that you take this matter into your own hands by really implementing these good quality diets. I have under files, I've shared a lot of content there. For those of you who are just joining my group, there's a lot of content there that you can use immediately. And if you have questions, please feel free to add to the feed on Q&A that gets posted every Monday and get your questions addressed. So it's very evident that lupus created the underlying symptoms long before the actual diagnoses. If you really share and listen to everybody who shared, we all know that something was wrong years before we were finally diagnosed. And it's also important to note that we just tack on a name to all the symptoms, and really, there is no such thing as disease. We just have dysfunction. We have imbalances in our core systems in our body, whether it be endocrinological, whether it be GI, immunological, central nervous system. We have an imbalance, and our body's going to have a host of reactions, and they're going to manifest. And it's a way for our body to tell us something's wrong so we can do something about it. Rather than looking to the meds and asking our doctors, it's really up to you to really try to heal your disease, because I honestly feel like they have very limited things to offer us, right? So it's all about prevention. I know that you know enough to know prevention is key, that you don't want to be sick with lupus because it can be really detrimental to our overall health, right? So, really work on healing the leaky gut, decrease inflammation, and reverse the mitochondrial dysfunction by decreasing the toxic load. And again, going back to the elimination diet that we have under files, taking a handful of vitamins and supplements that really helps in your recovery. Again, I have a good supply of them. You don't have to buy them from me. I have them available only because it's the only thing I trust with my patients, as well as for my own health. It's worked wonders for me. And so I want you to kind of weigh that and make your own decisions, right? Thank you so much for that question, Heather. I hope that that's clear. Moving on. Number 4 is, when having lupus, both lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, is it a difference in flare-ups? So generally, autoimmune flare-ups can be fatigue, weakness, and pain. Those 3 things are pretty much common in everybody, whether you have RA.
Thanks for listening to the Health Made Easy podcast. www.drconniejean.com